maybe I'll begin the discussion. Having worked in Norway, I felt like everyone my age was starting a firm. You know, in Europe, there's this environment that really fosters bravery from young architects to start practices. You win one Europan and you're set. You know, you can start a firm, and I think here it's a little more intimidating to do that. So I was just wondering if you could speak more to what gave you the guts to go out on your own right away and yeah, take a chance.
I think a part of it was, you know, the whole intern atmosphere in architecture is quite abusive. And what we wanted to do, not Zavin, of course, but we just thought if we're going to work really hard, we want to work really hard for ourselves. And when we have our own projects and we get to say, you know, it's a Studio North project, that's something that Mark and myself created. That was kind of a sense of pride that we really wanted to have. And yeah, just, and I don't know, the idea of working for someone else didn't really seem very attractive to either one of us.
And I think also we sort of developed a momentum coming out of school where we had opportunities that were presenting themselves. So we wanted to sort of just explore where those could go. And it just seemed like a good idea just to start a practice of our own where we can take on these projects. And it seems like that momentum just snowballs and more things come up. So, you know, we gave it a shot and it's working. So we're just seeing where it goes.
So just one more question before we hand it over to the audience. I was wondering, as a young practitioner, you must rely on a series of mentors in your practice because, as you said, you don't know how much to charge people, or every day you must have just pragmatic questions coming up. So how willing are other industry professionals to assist you, or do you find a sense of community in your practice?
Yeah, I would say definitely. And something that Mark and myself found, our first project that wasn't actually a family or friend was from a friend of ours who worked at a practice. And when we first started and came back to Calgary, we went to visit all our friends, do the studio tour of where everyone's working, and meet the partners. And one of our friends working at a firm had a project come in that was too big or too small for what they do, and they passed it to us. And since then, we've collaborated with that practice, and yeah, it's been very supportive. And that being said, one thing that we try to do, especially since we started our studio, was join different design initiatives in Calgary. One thing being D-Talks, so Design Talks. It's a lecture series. So we started hosting part of their lectures at our studio. So, it allows us the opportunity to meet all these extremely talented architects and developers who we could ask those questions to.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. So I guess I wanted to, maybe expand more on Elizabeth's first question. So one, to throw it back at Elizabeth and ask, Fian mentioned, when he was working at HOK, that he was, fortunately working less hours, so he had more time to push his own work on the side. And so I guess I would ask you, what has your experience been with that? KPMB is not necessarily known for being, a light workload here at the co-op initiative. And then, and how do you manage that and push your own work? And then to the Studio North team, going off and starting your own practice, how do you deal with the issue of licensure and the fact that, as a profession, we need to log our hours under other architects?
Thanks for that question. It's true. I don't have the same luxury as Fion did at HOK to leave at 6 necessarily every day. it's one of the more, I wouldn't say the abusive intern model, but they expect a lot of you, but they give a lot of returns back. So I've adopted less of a leave at 6 type attitude and more of a self-imposed sabbatical model. And they were fortunate enough to agree to that when I was given the chance to work in Norway, they gave me a leave of absence for a year. So yeah, it's been, you have to ask for it when you need it. If you put in enough hours, then let's say when I was doing my exams for licensing, I said, I have a night job now, so I have to leave at 6 every day. And they were very understanding of that. So they're a very supportive office in that way.
To address the topic of getting licensed, so far we've been pursuing things that are really interesting to us, and not being licensed hasn't gotten in our way at all. I think Matt and I both have the ambition to get licensed, and how we navigate that, we're not quite sure yet, to be honest. We're thinking potentially down the road it could be a situation where we partner with a licensed architect or get our hours through a sort of partnership, or maybe down the road we do hire an architect to be part of Studio North, where they might have part ownership, so that we can sort of expand our practice to take on larger works. But currently we're really quite happy where we are, and the work that we do and the scale of work we do, and we find it really fulfilling doing what we do. So it's not really currently it's not really like a factor that's really bothering us.
We do say we're architects, but we spell it with a K. So slight pronunciation difference.
I have a question for both Studio North and Elizabeth, and it has to do with the idea, Zach's taking my picture, it has to do with the idea of proving your thesis in some ways, and how that kind of fits into your thinking. So for the Studio North team, how actively did you pursue that goal of saying, my project has to have some kind of real world proof? How active was that in your thinking when you were doing your thesis work? Because it obviously translated into your practice quite directly. And then the same question kind of goes to Elizabeth. Did you consider, through your other initiatives, how you could essentially prove what you were saying in your academic research through a more professional engagement model, right?
I would say it was having thinking my thesis of something that I would do after I graduated, and testing it in the real world was something that I really explored while I was when I was developing that thesis question, and then with the whole idea of a feasibility study and taking business classes to see if it was feasible. Because for me, I didn't really want to it was kind of just in the appendix of my thesis. It didn't really influence, I don't think, the design, but it just definitely added another layer to my thesis that I think made it stronger at the end of the day.
So in the beginning, I think I found thesis challenging in its abstractness, this sort of contradiction of the fact that we're studying this art of patronage, but that in thesis you're both developing the problematic and solving it. So for me, I was looking for more of a feedback loop, which is why I work directly with a community. I would have my own midterm crits with the Band Council of Ganawage, and they provided me this structure in order to answer a problem. So in this academic forum of having zero constraint and imposing constraint upon yourself, I found I needed an external source to bounce that back and forth with.
I was wondering, I guess, more for Mark and Matthew, and a little bit related to maybe what Dan was talking about earlier, was, I guess, the sense of place and how that related to actually founding your practice. How important was the move to Calgary? Do you think it was absolutely necessary? Or, like, I guess, what's the importance of the decision of finding, like, the right market? Like, how important was it finding the right market, the same way that basically Dan developed this very tight relationship with Chelsea?
Well, for one, Calgary's home, and there's a lot of roots there, and I think that was a huge influence. But also knowing that Calgary's like a really exciting place right now, in that it's there's a lot of opportunities. It's sort of trying to find itself, and it's really open to new ideas and new ways of thinking. So I think, with Matt's thesis, it was really accepting of these ideas, even though there's still a lot of resistance, but there's a huge dialogue around it right now, and that's really exciting. In other cities, the idea has come to fruition in one way or another, and is especially like in Vancouver, laneway housing is well underway and has been for a while. But in Calgary, I think there's a huge demand for it, and there's all these signifiers that says, yes, this is what needs to happen. So that was a huge part of it.
I got a question. Did you confront, either of you, it seems that after the thesis, when it was carried forward, Elizabeth, in your case with the Prix de Rome, carrying forward a line of thought, it blossomed after you were released from the kind of maybe an academic setting, the stranglehold. I'm thinking of ethics clearance, for example. And Matt and Mark, you could say the same for you guys. Did you encounter anything in doing your thesis in terms of going out to a community? Today is very easy when you're outside of the academic setting, but did you find, was that a hurdle for you when you were doing your thesis, ethics? And because I know here, if I want to go and have a conversation with someone regarding my thesis and make a comment on it eventually in my book, I need clearance to do that weeks beforehand if I'm going by the rules. So did you encounter anything like that?
I don't know if I'm the best to speak about this because I didn't really go down any official medium when I did that, or I just went and did it and nothing bad happened, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best answer.
When you're from Calgary, you tend to act like a cowboy.
I ask for forgiveness later, but I don't know.
At McGill, at least when I was there, the curriculum was slightly different, and thesis was really only 2 semesters, and it was very quick, and the only structure was really provided by your advisor. So I don't think I had any rules, and I think to what Dan was speaking about, this idea of escaping school and going out into the world was for me really appealing. As sort of a transition between academia and practice. So I think, like I spoke about at the beginning of the presentation, this idea of participation and what it means to participate, and to be either activating or deactivating certain parts of a problem that you want to discuss. And I'm not sure if that answers your question. But.
Yeah, I think it's probably case-by-case basis, school to school, but just is a reality with us here. So just wanted your input. We have any more questions?
I have, I think, a very, very simple question. But Mark and Matthew, you mentioned it's really important that It's that you pick a topic that is exciting to the students and that then can carry on as a research later on in practice, et cetera, et cetera. But this kind of importance also sometimes creates a pressure to select the right topic or the right interest, et cetera, et cetera. So everyone who's sitting here obviously already has a research project. But we all know when you walk through the first semester of thesis research that this is somehow a challenging question to pick the right topic or the right, let's say, stream of research. Do you have any recommendations specifically for the students who are going into thesis next term?
I guess the thing that I would tell you is just pick something that you're really interested in. I mean, and because like what we addressed in the lecture, you're going to be an expert in it, and that's, you know, when you apply for a job after, I imagine that's what you're going to be talking about, is you're going to be applying for a firm that aligns with your interests. You're going to be talking about what you did for your thesis. Yeah, I would say pick something that you think is going to sustain. Hold your interest for, you know, 1 to 3 years that takes to write a thesis, and then, you know, imagine yourself 5 years from now if that's something that you know, it's kind of like dating in your 30s, you know? It's like you got to imagine yourself in a domesticated role with a person every time you meet someone. 5 years down the road. So yeah, just imagine that. Imagine you're dating your thesis, and if you could imagine yourself still dating that person 5 years from now.